he has started to follow through on his campaign promises. Just as many of us expected and hoped that he would, and the media told you there's no way he's going to get any of this done. Wayne Allyn Root is joining us right now, a commentator, author, man who was lucky enough to get to go to the inauguration, unlike me. How are you, Wayne?
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Tell me about your experience in D.C.
Well, first of all, I want to say that in my book, Angry White Male, I predicted that Trump would be the greatest can-do president in the history of America, and I underestimated. Who'd ever imagine that I would underpromise and underestimate? He's not can-do. He's already done. This guy's amazing. And I just wrote a commentary for one of the top conservative websites that'll be up tomorrow morning. The headline is, Donald Trump is already the greatest conservative president in history. I mean, in 5 days, the list of things that he's done, I'm looking at the list right now that I wrote because I went all over the internet to find everything he's done. The list is so long and so conservative and so patriotic and so pro-capitalism that I just want to cry. And I'm a macho guy who doesn't cry. This tears of joy. This is the greatest president. He makes Reagan look like a liberal. That's how great Donald Trump is in 5 days. I can't imagine what the next 4 years will be like. Amazing.
You know, I heard Ted Cruz say that this is going to be one of the most conservative cabinets in the history of this country. And I don't think people really appreciate that enough because, you know, I've said on this show, and it's the truth, Donald Trump didn't run as a conservative. He ran as the Republican candidate. A lot of conservatives had to accept the fact that he's not necessarily ever described himself as a conservative. But my goodness, so far he has governed from a very conservative point of view.
Yeah, and you know, I'm a conservative, and everyone knows I'm a conservative. I've written so many conservative political books, but I'm really a capitalist more than I'm a conservative. In other words, abortion's not my big issue. Stem cells were never my big issue. Gambling, online gambling isn't my issue. My issue is business, making America's business work again, making the economy go again, making American business open, you know, putting the sign up, we're open for business. That's really my number one priority, much more than conservative, but it just so happens that they intersect. Fiscal conservatism intersects with capitalism. It's low taxes and kill Obamacare and kill regulations and get the IRS off my back. All of those things, kill climate change, rein in the EPA. Those are all the things that make business go and grow and create jobs. So Donald Trump is this perfect combination of conservative and capitalist. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I think all of the Trumpers, all of the cruisers, the never Trumpers, the cruise people who were so vicious to Donald Trump, you should all be apologizing. You should all be eating crow because there's never been a greater conservative president than Trump. And I must say, I called it. I knew it because I'm friends with him, and I know that he's a can-do guy, and conservatism meets with capitalism.
You know, as I heard somebody say, I played the bite earlier from Karl Rove, and I'm not a huge Karl Rove fan, but he pointed out that there are some of these things, though, that he's kind of gotten the ball rolling on from an executive order standpoint, but he's still going to have to get these Republicans in Congress to go along with him to put the money into this wall and some of these other things. And some of that remains to be seen.
Yeah, it does. But he used executive orders to give the go-ahead to Keystone and the Dakota Access Pipelines. That's such good news. Certain things you don't need Congress for. I don't know how many people are aware that within 1 hour of taking the oath of office, all mentions of climate change were erased from the White House website.
I saw that.
Are you kidding me? This is like the most wonderful news I've ever heard. Do you realize that he erased all Spanish language from the White House website? It is now English only. Did you know that?
I did not know that,
It's amazing. I don't even know where he does all this. Who has time for this? Who has time to order everyone, hey, do me a favor, get rid of the Spanish on the website. Get rid of all references to climate change on the website. He ordered the EPA to stop going on social media like Twitter and Facebook. The EPA is not allowed to say anything on Facebook or Twitter anymore. He ordered with executive order, no Congress needed, the freezing of the hiring of federal employees. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves in life. It's not like I'm saying that if you work for the government, you're automatically a bad person, and there are bad people, but not everyone's bad. But you are getting paid way too much. There are way too many government employees, and there are, I believe the number is 75,000 federal government employees who make more than the governors of the state they live in. This is insanity. And the pensions are insane. And the year you're allowed to retire, like you could be 45, 50 years old and retire, and we're supposed to pay your pension for the rest of your life. And the pensions don't wind up being 70% of what you made. They wind up being 150% of what you made because they add in overtime, and they look at the last 3 years when they made the most money and worked the most overtime. Government employees really are bankrupting the United States of America. They're not bad people. You and I would do the same thing if you created rules because of unions that allow us to do that. You take advantage too. So I don't blame the government employees. I'm blaming the rules. You got to change all the rules. You got to freeze hiring. Don't allow any more of them to be hired. And the ones that are there, you got to change the pension, the way the pension is paid. You can't allow taxpayers to be on the hook for $100,000, $200,000 a year for the rest of all time, and you retire at the age of 45 and live to 90 or 100? Are you kidding me? If we did this, Mark, in a pizza parlor, if you allowed everyone who ever worked in a pizza parlor to get a pension of $100,000 a year, and there were people that were still alive who retired in 1970, when you walked in the pizza parlor for a slice today, they'd say no problem, $1,800 for a slice of pizza.
So we can cover our costs. You're right, and it's another great example of why, had an establishment candidate been the one elected, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. No.
And if it was Jeb Bush, not only would none of those things be true, he wouldn't have withdrawn America from the TPP treaty. He loved it. He wouldn't be renegotiating NAFTA. He wouldn't begin an immediate review of Obama's final hour giveaway. Literally, in his final hour, he gave away $220 million to the Palestinian Authority. Who does things like that? I mean, he's the most incredible, over-the-top Muslim sympathizer in the history of the United States of America. And to the very last dying day, he did three horrible things to Israel and the Jewish people. Number one, he allowed Israel to be censured at the United Nations, unheard of in the history of America. Number two, he gave away $220 million to the Palestinian Authority in his last hour. And he did that above the objections of the Republican Congress that had frozen the money. And he said, I don't care. I'm giving it to him in the last hour. Why is he so desperate? And the third thing, Mark, I want you to know is there's something called the Holocaust Commission in the United States, and it oversees the National Holocaust Museum. And Barack Obama, in his last day, named this terrible, terrible guy named Ben Rhodes, who is like the enemy of Israel and the Jewish people. He was the creator and the seller of the Iran Treaty. Oh. He was the guy that orchestrated the UN censure of Israel. And this guy was put on the Holocaust Commission on the last day by Barack Obama. What a sin. And I got to tell you, I'm going to recommend that Donald Trump, literally, these guys serve at the president's leisure, and I'm going to recommend to Donald Trump that he must ask Ben Rhodes to step down so he only spends a week on that commission. It's a disgrace and an insult to every Jew, and I happen to be Jewish, that a man who was the architect of the Iran Treaty should be allowed to serve on the Holocaust Commission. What a disgrace to the memory of 6 million Jews that died in the Holocaust.
Great point, and something I didn't know, so I'm glad you brought that to our attention. Before I let you go, Wayne, you've got a great article about your trip to the inauguration and how it reminded you of being there with your dad one time. Was that for Reagan's inauguration?
Yeah. You got the story right, but slightly wrong. Here's the real story. So my dad was a butcher. I always joke that I'm an SOB, son of a butcher. And my dad, the blue-collar butcher, answered an ad in the paper in 1962, an ad to start the Conservative Party in New York State, and became one of the original founders. And so even though he was a blue-collar butcher, he was a pretty powerful guy in politics, and he helped elect Ronald Reagan because him and his friends were the Conservative Party, and they were the first major group to endorse Reagan for president when no one thought he had a chance. That gave him a big boost. And so when Reagan wins the presidency in 1980, my dad opens the mail, and there's an invitation to the inauguration. Wow. So a blue-collar butcher is invited to the inauguration. He never went because he owned a two-man butcher store, and he couldn't take off 4 days. So my dad never went, but he held that invitation. He put it in a beautiful frame, and he put it in our living room. And for the rest of his life, till the day he died, he showed off to everyone that a butcher had been invited to Reagan's inauguration, and he loved Reagan to the last day. I realized I could not, even though I'm a busy guy, I could not avoid going to Trump's inauguration. He invited me on his friends and family list. great honor. I hope I'm friends and family of the President of the United States for the next 8 years. What a great, great honor. I'm so proud, and I realized even though I don't have time, I got to go because my dad never went. It was the regret of his life. He couldn't go. I can go. I've got the resources to go. I'm going to make up for the first Root family's mistake, and I think my dad's looking down from heaven with some tears in his eyes.
I'm sure he is. What a great story. Wayne Allyn Root, as always, thanks for your time. I'll direct people to Root for America, and you can link there to Amazon for the book Angry White Male that I'm sure is still a bestseller.
Thanks, Mark. God bless.
All right, take care. Wayne Allyn Root, he's like a Texas tornado that rolls through when you get him on the air. He's great. Isn't that eye-opening, though? What he just pointed out that Barack Obama did in his closing hours as like one more jab at Israel. I mean, these are the things we talked about, and I've had liberals want to call in here and argue with me, why are you such a supporter of Israel, and why do you hate the Palestinians? I don't hate the Palestinians, but you have to recognize the reality of that situation. That's the difference. Some of us deal in reality, and some of us don't deal in reality.
You need to get your head out of your butt, focus on the real issues.
All right, that's all I'm saying. It's that easy. When we come back, we're going to break down Sean Spicer's press conference a little earlier. Donald Trump, the president's getting ready to have a briefing with the Department of Homeland Security. We'll bring you some of that live if we can, and we're going to talk to Jared Halperin for Fox News Radio on the process and progress of Trump's cabinet confirmations. We'll be back.